Should I interview you?
What do you want to ask me?
You spoke this weekend to 300 women, and what message did you want them to go away with?
Well, I think the main thing that I really wanted to impress upon them was the fact that I think we resist this idea of respect because it feels like we are going to be, our power is going to be taken away from us. And I just wanted to unpack for them why I believe that showing respect to men is actually the most empowering thing that we can do. And
how does it empower?
Because I believe that that Scripture teaches things that are gender specific. If you don't think that men and women are different, then you wouldn't get this. But I think that God gave us an instruction that He knew would help us, not hinder us. And so that was kind of what I was trying to talk about, that all instructions in the Bible are to help us, not to hinder us. And so if He gave us this instruction of how to treat men, it's obviously a need that men have that will help men grow. And when you do it authentically, then men will respond authentically. But even like with the whole love thing, I explained to them that we've all seen men who have used love to manipulate because they know it's something that women are desperate for. So yeah, I just talked to them about how they have the power, and I shared a lot of stories. I've seen when I've been disrespectful to men, that doesn't work. And when I've been respectful to men, it actually really works. And people think that it's going to make men just power over us. But really, when you show authentic respect to a man, he will then eventually kind of defer to you and want to help you and serve you. But our culture has flipped that and said, don't respect men. And it's obviously not working because relationships aren't functioning that well.
And so that's what you communicated to them there. And what was some of the feedback you got from some of the women?
They were pumped about it. I mean, they were just like, why hasn't anyone told us this? You know, like, I'm so happy if you tell us this now. A lot of the older women were saying, this makes so much sense. Like, if I wish I would have known then what I know now, which is kind of like the whole premise of my blog.
That's coincidental. That's the name of it.
Hey. And then a lot of the younger women were just like, this is so true, this makes so much sense. And they just, you know, they identified with my stories and my struggle. I shared just my whole struggle with coming to grips with the idea of respect because it's everything in my nature, it resists it. It just doesn't make sense to what culture tells me, but I've also just seen that it works. And I know that I'm a strong woman, so I'm never going to let a man abuse me, and I think that's one of the biggest fears. But the thing is that I love what you say about that there is nothing that anyone can ever do to me to cause me to show them disrespect. You know, yes, I might have to remove myself if a situation is not good. I might have to, you know, break up with somebody, but there's nothing that person does that gives me license to be mean. Mm-hmm. So I think it actually really elevates us as long as we can do it without being arrogant and pietistic. I just think it holds such power, and yeah, and it made sense to them. I think they identified with me, but it made sense to them. So people seemed excited.
And that's what unconditional means. People have the idea when we talk about unconditional respect, which is what we talk about, that you should then show respect to any kind of behavior that is unacceptable to all of us. And that is so irrational and unacceptable to people, and rightly so, because that's not the point that's being made. We respectfully confront those things. But unconditional means that there isn't anything ultimately you can do to get me to hate you.
Yeah.
There isn't anything you can do ultimately to get me to show contempt. Now, that doesn't mean that's easy, but we have to understand philosophically that ultimately you don't determine the outcomes of my responses.
Yeah.
And my response is my responsibility.
Well, like you said, the opposite just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you're a pragmatist, it just simply isn't going to work. There's another point you made earlier. You said, you know, it's not natural for you to show respect. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the thing that we are espousing, that when there's conflict, it's very natural for a woman to be disrespectful at the level of intimacy. Just like during conflict, it's very natural for a man to react in ways that feels unloving to a woman.
Yeah.
It's very natural. And that's why from a biblical standpoint, God commands me to put on love, because it protects me against that tendency, that propensity, that proclivity during that moment, you know, to react.
Yeah.
And the same thing, women need to understand the reason they oppose this idea of putting on respect is because they know it's not in them to do it.
Yeah.
And there is pushback because this doesn't feel natural. And the point is that is exactly right. And that's why the Christ followers need to recognize God has given this revelation to protect us from getting on what we call the crazy cycle. When a wife feels unloved, it's very natural for her to react in ways that feels disrespectful to him, when he feels disrespected, it's very natural for him to react in ways that feel unloving, and thus the crazy cycle. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love, and this baby spins. And good-willed couples get on it, and that's what we're campaigning on, helping couples to get off of it. But one of the things you have to recognize is how natural it is to be disrespectful as a woman during conflict, and how natural it is for a man to be unloving during conflict. And we need to take steps to stop that, or the relationship will get out of control.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that I pointed out to the women was I just said, you know, it's very, I gave them a bunch of examples of showing respect to guys and how that actually affected them positively, and they were shocked by the response, because a lot of people just won't try it or they don't recognize it. And so I said, if there is a power that we have that we're unaware of that can bring this out of men through the stories that I shared, then there's also a power that we have that we are unaware of that we can destroy men. And I think guys sometimes don't show. There are some guys that are in tune and can articulate and show, but most guys don't expressively show their feelings on their face as much. So I think during conflicts, we don't realize guys are far more sensitive than we actually think that they are, and we have the power to actually destroy them in conflict with our disrespect that we're not aware of. And so I don't think a lot of women are evil-willed or mean like a lot of guys will make them out to be. It's just, no, they don't know, and guys aren't as expressive as women are.
And also the culture has removed this idea of respecting a man from the marital radar screen. I mean, not one academic institution is going to set aside grant money to study this question, how to show respect to your husband because he's a male. It isn't going to happen. It's not politically correct. And when we talk about it, it's viewed as a marginal issue. Women think of love as being everything. If we just love one another, that's all that matters. So when she shows disrespect, she's not really trying to be disrespectful. She's trying to communicate a need to be reassured of his love. But what happens is that she comes on way too strong, and then he now has to try to make sense out of this. And so he's sitting there thinking, she's a loving woman, and also the culture's affected him that, you know, she's a good woman, but inwardly he's feeling like, whoa, I don't deserve this disrespect. But he doesn't break down and cry. Men don't break down and cry. You say to a woman, I could never love you, she's going to start weeping if she's in love with you.
Yeah.
Men don't start weeping. They don't, you don't respect me. Because she'll say, well, that's exactly right, bozo. And so he just goes into himself, and he stonewalls, gets a little angry, gets moody, and pulls back. And he can't put a voice and vocabulary to it. And the best he's able to come up with is you're not being respectful right now. So she doesn't understand what he's saying. That's not a major issue. So you talk about two good-willed people who, again, really end up feeling very confused and misunderstood. And but there's a way off of that crazy cycle. But it's a matter of not marginalizing the issue of respect. And as you point out, it really is the key to motivation. Meeting another person's deepest need motivates them. The key to motivating another person is meeting that deepest need. Now, there's a fine line between motivation and manipulation, which is the point you're making. But if we are authentic people and we really want to meet the need of another person as an in itself, then it's highly motivational. It influences, it energizes. But the point you're also making is when you deprive a person of that, or when you do the opposite of that, there's a power there too, and that is it begins to create a lack of energy in that male soul, and he pulls back and does not connect. And then she's baffled as to why he's not connecting with her until she understands the role of respect in the male spirit.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you so much. It's good to have you here, Dad. Thank you.
How much do I get?
My respect.
I'm energized, baby.
On the next Ask Joy, Joy finally loses her mind.
You don't see things the way she does.